We are in the 41st meeting of Chromatic Wednesdays, and today we're gonna host a completely different format, which is perhaps Salda already defined it as a mini exhibition. Previously we had screenings, we had talks, we had panels, we had other sort of meetings in the frame of the Chromatic Wednesdays, which happens in the new format twice a month. But this time we're gonna show you an exhibition for 2 weeks time period until the next event in the series. And for this occasion we have 2 artists coming together. There are also a title which shapes up every month's activities, and this month's activity was defined by the concept of recurrence. And actually there were other ideas, and one of them was interplay. And the first one was mutuality, but I think there's 2 concepts which are left behind also to a certain extent explains the collaboration here. So it is the interplay and perhaps also the mutuality between 2 subjectivities. And in the contemporary art, of course, creating a subjective narrative is quite important, but there are also cases in which collective creating is happening through artist duos, collectives, and so on. I believe the theme of recurrence, the current concept title, comes from a point in which that you look both to similar phenomena in the social life which have some sort of interplay and some kind of reverberation between each other. So I wanted to start with a very simple question: how the idea to work together came for you, İrem Sözen and Selen Solak. We had the idea to skip the biographic part, but it will bleed into your responses, I guess, throughout the session. Perhaps just to give a brief idea, İrem was here for a scholarship for 5 months, and it is ending. So we are at the departure point for this residency. But Selen has been in Germany for a while and in Berlin for
1 year.
For 1 year. So how this collaboration came together? We can start with that.
You can start maybe with the residency.
Yes, we met actually through social media, as it's very common these days, through Instagram, and we liked each other's work a lot. It was very obvious. And then we started to talk, like chat, little by little, and we learned that, I learned that Selen is moving to Berlin, and I was also accepted to this residency program organized by NGBK and Depo in Istanbul. So it was inevitable for us to meet, and on the first meeting we talked about our work, and there were so many common themes that we were discussing and problematizing, because we are both coming from a kind of scientific background. She studied both arts but also science, and I studied engineering, and now I did my PhD in building science. But we are also both doing photography, and a lot of questions in our mind were related to scientific approach to nature, what kind of problems we have with this approach, or also when producing images, photographs. We had a lot of common themes coming up, although we are standing in different positions, and that was a very strong point that we connected, and we started to meet every week without planning, and then we had to do something together, and with this invitation it was a good opportunity to work on this kind of small exhibition. And we looked at the connections between our work during this period of time. It was very effective period for looking at each other's work and looking at connections and discussing new subjects related to the subjects that we are already working on. Maybe if you want to add something.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very nice point that when you came to Berlin, and as you said, we spent a lot of time, and it was very clear in the very first days that we want to do something together. For me, it was a nice thing to see your work in the studio that you are working, and it was also a starting point for me, for myself, finding different connections, the similarities and the different points, and it's opened a very nice way that to create such a thing together, that what things we have in common, that I think we will discuss later on. But yeah, it was quite an obvious thing to work together, yeah.
Yes. Of course, we had some kind of prior conversation before our session, and I had the opportunity to learn much more about your work and also about the constellation that we find within the exhibition. And I mean, very shortly speaking, I see two axes within the exhibition. One is the relationship between the Homo sapiens and other non-human living beings, specifically perhaps animals, but there are also insects within the constellation. The second axis is life itself and its representation, I would say. And while we had this small tour about the singular pieces, I felt that some sort of explanation is needed, perhaps a little bit, to understand fully the references of single pieces. Perhaps, I mean, I also do a lot of exhibition tours recently, unfortunately. So it is sometimes really helpful to clarify certain things, to understand about the specific pieces, and perhaps you can also talk a little bit more about the concept of recurrence. I mean, how your interests somehow converged with each other through the theme of recurrence, the concept of recurrence. How should we do it? We had the idea to have an anti-clockwise.
So we go through the works,
yeah.
And maybe later to the Padlet.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So if we start from this side, I'm here for almost like 5 months now, and I worked on a project about generally like non-human subjects, particularly animals, but also plants and non-human subjects, non-living beings as well. And I finalized my project here during the residency and made a dummy book that is there. And when I'm close to completing my project, I also worked a lot about the institutional aspects of relating to natural world, like zoos or botanical gardens. So coming closer to the end of my residency, I started to work with archival images more. So this first work consists of images that I found in the archives, particularly relating to this to Carl Hagenbeck, who lived in the 19th century, and he was a very famous trader of animals and also humans for the zoos and also circuses. And he brought around more than one third of all animals and humans to be exhibited in the zoos in Europe and also to United States. So I found these images in archives and made some, crop them in specific ways and bring them together. Maybe we can talk about in more detail later, because these two photographs on the wall are also related to him. Because he was after collecting all these animals in different parts of the world, he learned a rumor about an animal like a dinosaur, which actually doesn't exist, and he made an expedition and tried to find this animal. Of course, he couldn't find. And when he came back to Hamburg, where he built his own zoo, which still exists and belongs to the same family. He built these dinosaur sculptures, which are huge in size, to represent the animal that he could not catch. And this second work is more inside my finalized work, album of remarks, which I finished during my residency. And next to it there is a book that I made. It's just a dummy book. It's a maquette book, the first maquette I made, including all the work in the series. Should I be quicker, or maybe
no,
it's okay?
Fine.
Okay. So in this work, I didn't directly relate to the institutional aspects of our relationship with the environment. It's much more related to visual language. Maybe I can explain more when we look at the Padlet presentation. But I see a very important intersection between visual language, which is, I feel, less anthropocentric language, to see and work with the natural environment. In this project, my work has a different way of approaching natural world, but specifically this work, this single work, which is hanging on the window, is more related to this, again, institutional way of relating to the world, because these are three different ways of controlling. For me, it represents the three different ways of controlling the nature. First one is the sculptures of polar bears in the zoo. The second one is the existing polar bears, which I photographed. These are not archival images. These are my pictures. And the third one is the hands of this famous polar bear, which is exhibited in Natural History Museum, Knut. Maybe most of you have heard. Very popular animal, loved by a lot of people in Berlin. So I wanted to place them together to relate them how this control, the urge to control the natural environment, can take shape in three different forms. And the last one here is also, maybe I should change it because there is some, should be like closed. As I said in the first work, I cropped images, and this one I experimented with found images and found objects, like this box I found when I was walking on the street with Selen. And actually she recommended me to take the box and maybe you can do something with it. And then at the end I used it with the found images. These images are also related to the first work about Carl Hagenbeck and trading of animals in the 19th century, how elephants are carried in -60 or -12 degrees with such high clothing on them, or how they are trained or carried in like high masses together. And after here, maybe you can continue with
yeah, the box.
Sorry.
Box was a good point. Yeah, we found it on the street near Gleisdreieck, and it was for a child game, I guess. This box. Yeah. From this part on, I have first starting with the zine that I made 2 years ago. These photographs are from Istanbul, and we were at that time in holiday and staying one friend's uncle's home, and it was a place that I haven't knew before, so it was a new place to me. And when I entered inside, it was full of animal sculptures, real animals, which are like dead animals, and also the child room itself was full of such collection, from small animals to very large animals. It was very exciting because when you first come into such a room, first you see several things at the same time. Polar bear near to whale, you think that are they there by chance, or he kind of played and created such a scene. And I could just only photograph, and it was what I could do at the time, but I was really impressed. But simultaneously, I had the feeling that, okay, these people are rich, and these toys are expensive, I couldn't also get rid of this feeling that I had, and this then came together, and I also thought what could happen if I had such animals or just such toys when I was a child. But yeah, it's impressive, but at the same time full of several questions, because they are by chance, togetherness and everything. And in here, I'm exhibiting this work, and it is in general more close to like other livings, other beings, or like we can say, I guess, non-human beings. But it is not, the point is not to ask a very big question, but just presenting the common things, for me at least, everyday world that I came across, and see such patterns which are kind of, will be then, is connected to recurrence. So these are the patterns that we see in our everyday life, a toy or some other thing. And there, for example, there is this photograph, bees in a beer glass. I think you know that if you are in a cafe somewhere, if it is a wasp season, they can be very disturbing. You scare, and at the same time you don't want to hurt them, but also you scare if it comes into your beer and if it stings you or something like this. And mostly the solution is that they put glass with a small amount of beer and they fell inside. And I learned that wasps, they also get drunk and they die in there, and it was also a strange thing. For example, I learned that in touristic places in Antalya, they also throw meat to the other side of the mountain, that the wasps go there and they don't disturb people. Of course, such things come across as everyday thing. These are the connections that I have. There is also like a small installation which is connected to my other practice that I daily work. It is a scientific, natural science-based project which I do. Devices like solar panels or light-emitting materials, working with light-emitting materials. So it is completely different area, but I, of course, see such connections also in the work, the daily work that I'm doing. The last work on video is kind of the connection to everything that I had beside this. I want to explain a bit, because when I see such works, honestly, I feel a little bit stupid if I don't understand it. That's why I want to explain a bit what is going on there. These are the light-emitting materials. These are transparent, but actually they have several layers. I guess in this one it was 6 layers, and these are the devices that I made with my assistant. These are luminescent materials that are called quantum dot materials, new technology, whatever. Only the 2 color is quite developed, which is blue and red. And these materials mostly used in displays or for lighting things. So if we would have red, so RGB would be, and we would have a display. And we see in here a device under voltage, which means that you kind of illuminate the device with voltage. And because that they are under investigation, they live very short time. They reach their maximum and they die in 30 seconds. So this is the background, but what I feel is that it is for me important to show a very initial state of a technology. This is a unit, and we don't really see such things, or other lay audiences don't see, and they stay in the papers, scientific papers, and we don't come across till it is on our hands as a cell phone or as display or some other thing. I like that it is full of processing errors and dust, and it shows the fragile thing in these technologies. And it is, as we are here showing a lot of photographs, and as these materials are for displays or for such things, I think it is having, at this point, quite a clear connection, at least for me. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps we can again come back to the concept of recurrence. You can explain a little bit more, but when I first heard the word recurrence, of course, it triggered in me some sense of temporality. It's like repetition, lapse, and so on. And when I also looked at the content of the pieces, it also came to my mind that these works are quite embedded in some sort of historicity. They belong to a certain period. Irem, perhaps your piece is much more about the late 19th century, early 20th century period in which the humankind came, or perhaps the Western societies came to the conclusion that they can dominate the other cultures, plus also the nature fully. Selen, perhaps your work is a little bit more referring to the recent past in which, let's say, the consumerism accompanying the neoliberal politics of the last 3-4 decades, and the destruction comes with it is being reflected on the humankind's relationship with nature. So, but when we think about the pool, I don't know, 300,000 years of history of human being, they have been born into, let's say, habitats which they have had to be cohabitat, and they have been already some kind of modes of representation about the surrounding, about the nature, about the life outside, or they have been already some sort of consumption and representation of the life outside. How do you see the temporality of your work, and how the recurrence, the idea of recurrence, is merging the work of you two?
Thank you. You can start. Maybe we can also refer to Padlet at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, it's, I think the recurrent thing is, I think, kind of, I don't know the exact word, but it's related to framing nature, classifying, and exploitation for some purpose. It could be just starting with a very innocent curiosity, or just for exploitation to produce some toys or technology. But the recurrent thing or repeating thing is like the basic similarity is to urge to control, I think, or to make something out of it. For me, when I study this 19th century, late 19th century domination over natural environments, the relationship between curiosity, sometimes care, but also control and violence is very important, which is a very complex subject, and that's what attracts me to this subject. Because sometimes when I read, for example, the biography of this guy, Carl Hagenbeck, there are also very sentimental passages that how he relates to animals, maybe more than us, more closely, even he is doing very incredible stuff, like very violent stuff. So I want to understand how they transform to each other. Or when I read this famous Alexander von Humboldt's approach to nature, which I think shaped a lot of Germany's history as well. He has a very sentimental and holistic and approach to nature, which he sees everything in relation to each other, but at the end it ends up with classifications and taxonomy, and which he is actually against, but he then becomes one of the pioneers of the museums or zoo. So it's kind of transforming, maybe like we cannot control ourselves at that point. And I think it's this main subject, how we control and exploit, maybe in technology or the production of these. Or
yeah, for example, when we were together, we were thinking if with these photographs or other images, videos, can we really see for example, such things. For example, I'm wondering if the material of the toys are visible, if in the first place when we look at them. I can imagine that this comes as secondary because toys are like very important, and for, especially children have very genuine relationship with them, and adults too. But if you consider that starting in the beginning of the 20th century, most of the things changed, and we are really dominated with certain materials, and it is very clear, and it is basically everywhere. For example, such toys are developed in the 20th century clearly because we had the plastic in our lives. Yes, it is a very easy method with the several kind of production methods. You can design something with today with the 3D images, and you can turn it to something very real. And the plastic allows it. But can we really see what does it mean to us? So can it also open a question if things could be different, or how things could be different, how we are seeing this material? For example, in here I have put the company, Schleich, the toy company that I have. Most of the toys, I think, in this zine is from this company. And when you look at the website, they have several definitions for the material and how adventurous these toys are for the children. But if you look at them, these are plastics, and they don't have. They don't stay far away from this consumer-minded or classifying things or controlling things. These are very related. Same with other materials, like today's display technologies or image technologies. They exploit certain materials, and they have very direct connection to colonialism or today's capitalistic politics.
One important aspect, just reading from you, is like this perfect visualization of things is, I think, because zoos are also the place to display animals. People want to see the real animals, or we want to make perfect toys which represents exactly the same animal perfectly, or we develop these technologies to show things perfectly. Do we need such perfect images why do we need them? What is this curiosity, or is it, no, maybe, yes, this is also a question which we ask when we are dealing with photography, because especially for this exhibition, it was, I mean, Selen also, I mean, I'm kind of transforming, because I was much more inclined to represent my images like on walls with frames, but now with our discussions it's also changing. So here we also experimented with the quality of image. We just used a printer at home, Selen's home, to produce these images, or we didn't care about the quality. Sometimes I didn't care, I mean, we checked the quality, but we didn't search for the perfect quality. We wanted to see how low quality works with the meaning. So,
there's a kind of critical distance to
yes,
realism that has been introduced by the industry to represent the, let's say, animals or the insects as much as perfect and create this kind of reality effect. And I understand in many aspects your formal choices were in some way a kind of resistance to it, like choosing a little bit grained texture on the photograph, or perhaps also the dimensions of the photographs are a little bit smaller than the representation that we are used to see in Notre Kunde Museum or other places, other museums, and also the fanzine is perhaps another format that is being escaping
it's a format that allows you actually anything you can do in there. So it's a format that gives you quite a good freedom to play with the things. For me, the same, the image, the quality itself, how it is when it is pixelated, how it is when it doesn't have such a good quality, how it is when it feels like it is zoomed. So I think it's all really or framed cropped, yeah.
In Irem's work, it's very visible that it does not, let's say, deliver the completion of the image. So, but you both are concentrated on the medium of photography, right? I mean, in your previous practice or in your future plans, will photography remain as the main medium for your artistic work, or how do you see your occupation with photography?
Yeah, for me, yes, because I like photography as a language, very similar to words. Maybe we can, can we go a little bit up? So, especially for my final work, I focused on this aspect of photography more. When I'm studying non-human subjects, it became more clear that I need a language, not like simple pictures, but to deliver some meaning. So I see images as visual meanings rather than delivering the reality. So it has its meaning itself, like words. So I like to use images as words in a sentence and connect them to each other. That's something that I'm very much connected to. So I think I will continue. It will be the main part of my work, using images, because it's very easy to take pictures. I mean, this makes it. This adds the potential to photography to be used as a language, like words, like writing. So this is, I think, very powerful tool for talking about things in a different way, with senses rather than basic, like rational thinking, which is, I feel like it's more related to non-human subjects. To see with perception rather than rational thinking.
Mm-hmm. Selen, in your work,
I think photography itself, it is with the cell phones and everything, it's everywhere and it is constantly evolving, and I think that's why it is very impressive to see how it is changing. And I guess even though it changes, I think the connection to image for me, for myself, will certainly continue, because this is how I think with the video and image. But I can't really see if it is photography, because I think the meaning is really changing, like day by day even, because we are seeing a lot of images around and with different cameras and everything, which is good at some point. Yeah, I guess it will continue, yeah.
Well, of course, there are shared thematics in your pieces that you picked up from perhaps your general practice together, in the points that you find that things could relate with each other, but there are also formal commonalities between your practice, I would say, also the occupation with printed matter, for example, beside the photography. So do you think that this collaboration can recur in the future? How do you see this coming together?
Of course. Yeah, of course, it's for sure.
Any plans so far, or?
It's for sure. And first you invited me for the zine project that we are making, and then we continued with this exhibition. I think we will go on with the zine project probably, because it's in next year, within this 1 year, and we will go on like this. Yeah.
I think this was a very short time, even though she was here for 5 months. But I guess we just started, and this exhibition was quite a good opportunity to know each other and see the points to connect our works and see the points where they are separated, I think we will be happy to continue.
I guess that was from our part the backstage information for you, the audience, but also we also wanted to open it up to the floor. Any questions, any remarks, any comments? From you? Has everyone seen the pieces? I guess there were some people who came during the
Hello.
talk.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Yeah, really nice works. My question is about this guy who has a zoo in Hamburg in 19th century. So, as an artist, as an artist, your approach is like, controlling the nature. You approach that like a critically, but you also mentioned that his relation with the animals are somehow maybe, sometimes more, I don't know, closer than us. So if you can explain it just a bit more, maybe that would be nice. And also, as a second question, controlling the nature, when we say right now we are facing disasters like climate disaster, or it's also about maybe humanity are trying to like control the nature. Is there a connection in your also approach like this? Because I think I find it like a related when you try to try to control the nature, but nature replies it in a really I don't know, like a bad way.
The last sentence, nature?
I mean, we try to control the nature, but we get a really bad response right now when we think about climate change or like COVID or I don't know.
For the first question, I mean, I didn't want to say something very positive about him, but I really think experience is very important when you relate with things. So he spent a lot of time with animals. So I didn't want to make things, because now also we are going to many people are going visiting the zoo, so it's not like totally black and white. That was what I meant. Like this guy did very maybe bad stuff, but still, I mean, it's very easy to judge it, but how about people who are going to the zoo today or eating meat? So it's not so easy to make ethical statements about that. That was my point, maybe. And for the climate change, it's also related to the subject that I study. I make my research as I did my PhD in building physics, and my subject is about climate and built environment relationship, and I study also about the climate change now. So that was an important connection between my work and my academic practice, actually. So yes, that's a very good intersection, and I'm studying about that, how humans control the environment, or maybe not able to control. I think they are very much related to each other. I mean, I think we need a more reciprocal relationship, both when we think about climate change, and both when we think about our relationship with, basic relationship with animals, plants, and everything. So instead of controlling, making a relationship with feedback mechanisms, with reciprocity principles. Was that an answer? I'm not sure. I can add more.
Yeah, it was a nice answer. Adding it like with feedback mechanisms is like a possible with like a sound medium, for example.
Sorry?
But also feedback mechanisms, like with a plant, you can, for example, make music or this kind of stuff. But would it be possible to do a feedback mechanism also in visual medium? It's also like just thinking about interesting question right now. Maybe you are also dealing with this kind of stuff. Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question about the dimension of the printed matter here. what we see, and how did you come to these sizes? And is it related with the printed medium that you are really related with, like photo zines or photo books, and or is it related with the printing machine that you have at home, or found object to fit it in? And yeah.
Maybe all. I can.
Yeah, you can start. Yeah.
Okay. For if you're concerned about the small sizes, for that, it's for my latest work. It's mostly small size because, as I said, I like the connection between images, not single images, but rather than like sentences or groups, assemblages of images which work together. So I think the smaller size fits better to use them, to relate them together when you look at the whole work. That was one point. But for other things, of course, I like, as I said, reciprocity or getting feedback. Also, when I work with found images or found objects, this is the relation. It's not like I may have a project and I apply it, but then relating to the materials that I found at that moment. And this also can affect my decision about the size. Maybe.
Yeah, I like the point, the printer size. I think it's important. Yeah, printer size. Yes, if you can print A4 and A3. If you have a printer at home and they are expensive, of course, the colors, papers, and everything, you try to produce in medium quality and with on a paper which is not very expensive. And I think it works well with the zines and other kind of prints. I think printing at home is also quite a good choice. Nowadays it is also improving a lot. So these confinements are good things, I guess, in the work.
It was interesting when I showed my photo book, which was printed with a Xerox printing machine, and someone told, "What a good print!" It was just a Xerox. Or for this exhibition, maybe our printer is not. We tried to work with a printer, which was perfect, and these two prints are by him, actually. But then we had prints at home, and we didn't see much difference, actually. I mean, in terms of feeling, maybe this is better. So this was also a point we discussed during the producing process. And it was really a good experience because normally, before for my exhibitions, I decide everything on computer screen and then maybe it's just with small working prints and then I go and print them and then I cannot change them. It's very expensive. When you get huge prints, maybe it doesn't work well. But now we could have the chance to try different sizes, limited with the printer size.
Doğayla çalışan iki artist olarak belki sergiyle alakalı değil ama gözlemleriniz nasıl? Türkiye'den yani bir sene önce geldiniz, bir taneniz, diğeriniz daha yeni rezidence'de. Buradaki Berlin'deki doğayla çıktığınız zaman dışarı, Gleisstreik'ten bahsettiniz. İstanbul'da karşılaştırdığınız zaman böyle bir ekstra bir düşünceniz oldu mu?
Perhaps I should translate first.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I can ask also in English, sorry. Yeah, as an artist, two artists who comes from Istanbul, like one of you was like from 1 year and the other like for the residency. When you go out here in Berlin to the, for example, Gleisstreik, and you make a photos, like it's for sure different, but is there any special, I don't know, things that you realize that the difference in the nature in Istanbul and also in Berlin?
I should also add that there is a really big discussion going on in Turkey and in Istanbul and perhaps also throughout the country about mostly stray dogs and stray cats, and there's unbelievable violence happening towards these animals, which were integral parts of the social life in the past. But recently, with the increasing friction, social friction, or depression, or whatever, I don't know what is. Perhaps it was already there, but there's an immense violence going on, and also a conflict between people who want to give some kind of living space to life on the streets for other living beings, and for those who do not want to have a life with these dangerous species, and one of those arguments that do you see any stray dog in Germany is one of the arguments that this kind of very violent, very fascistic kind of behavior is justifying itself through a discursive argument in which also the absence of stray animals on the streets are being shown as a niveau of civilized society, and there are kind of plans to eliminate further these animals from the streets. So completely different context. I wanted to add these things.
Okay, yes, for me there was a very interesting differences. You mentioned Gleisdreieck or also Südgelände Park and all these subjects of urban parks and urban nature. Here it's, again, this control issue is very much evident for me. Of course, care and control together. Here I feel like there are the city is much greener, of course, it's much more enjoyable, large parks everywhere, people care about trees, but all the trees have numbers, you can see in an online map, all trees, the sizes, everything is measured. This is very strange, and you don't have stray dogs. This is something negative, I think. Maybe in Turkey we don't have so much strong nature, it's being destroyed much more easily because there is no control, but at the same time, because again, due to the lack of control, we can have more opportunities to relate, to have stray dogs, stray cats. So this is a question, how much control, also I think it's a very important question considering domestic animals. We were talking today, for example, if you care for them, they will reproduce in large numbers. What we should do, should we control them or how much we should control? I think in Berlin, I felt like they are too much controlled. And it has positive and negative results. So I'm confused about, I have questions. But it was very interesting to see the difference. And even this, I watched this documentary, Natura Urbana. It was about, I pronounce it wrong, maybe the wastelands, Brachen, or it's in Berlin, in Germany, these wastelands which are not used in urban space are called something like Brachen. I'm not sure about the pronunciation, correct me. But these are like, these days it's very popular to leave spaces like that because these different plants coming from different countries which are kind of traveling like immigrants people. So here at some point they were trying to remove them to keep the native plants only in place. But now they are open-minded about them, but still in these areas which are kept like kind of including both native and immigrant plants, they are still being kind of controlled. They never stop the control. They cut the trees because they say it's needed for the diversity of animals. So for me it's very strange and interesting point.
Selen, do you have any comparison between the toy production? I guess Schleich is a German
company, yeah. Something came to my mind. I think the difference is the parks in general, because I think we were together and we were walking through Tempelhof. In here, I have the feeling that, I mean, if you have the chance, you can, in the parks, without being illegal, you can gather together and without having all the eyes on you, because gathering in there is a very normal thing. You go there with friends, or even you can, of course, go there alone, but parks are kind of maybe a very different thing in here. It's very, you can go there alone with friends and you can really get lost and get rid of the things that makes you anxious in the daily life. I think this is the difference. And the production, I guess Germany is in general is one of the leading places for such toys, because I think, if I'm not wrong, it completely started in here in Germany. I learned that there was a woman, Marianne Steif, I don't know, I put in here, I think, I found it very interesting. She had a polio when she was a child. Then she went to some courses and learned needlework, etc. In the very right, yeah, Margaret Steif, yeah. I think it is one of the first companies. Then these catalogs are very strange to me, and they are nice, and it is very connected also how the nature is shaped in here. The story of this woman is like this. I didn't know it. I learned it recently. She is the inventor of teddy bear. So this bear is made in here by her in Germany. Then a guy from America sees it in a fair and orders 1 million, and then it kind of get a very good attention in America because of it's a Teddy Roosevelt times. Then it becomes a teddy bear. It was very interesting. I think it has very direct connection to the parks today and the environment that they want to control. But I have to say that I lived in other cities in Germany. I'm feeling that it is less controlled because, as you said, there is different culture in here about this urban environment, about the plants and animals. So I guess as a nice point, and I want to comparison with Turkey at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, if not any question, we can close the session. Thank you very much for this beautiful exhibition, and thanks for coming here. Top